Before we get started, hit the comments and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Whether you're catching sunrise in Nairobi, burning midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to hear from you. Don't just watch silently, let me know where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. The first sound wasn't the scream. It was the wet thud of a boot hitting ribs. Captain Elara Voss, U.S. Marine Corps, tasted blood before she felt pain. The alley behind the Monte Grigio Marina smelled of salt, fuel and old fish. Yellow security lights flickered like nervous eyes. Her K9 Rook lunged once, just once, before a metal baton cracked against his skull. The yelp that followed wasn't loud. It was worse. Short. Broken. The kind of sound that stayed with you forever. Elara's hands were zip-tied behind her back, leather gloves scraping concrete as she tried to crawl to him. A man laughed above her. Young. Come. Entitled. The kind of laugh that had never been told no. Luca Bellevere adjusted his white linen jacket as if this were a dinner spill. He crouched so Elara had to look at him. Gold watch. Clean shoes. No fear in his eyes, only curiosity. You Marines, he said softly, almost kindly, always think rules protect you. He nodded. Another kick landed. Elara's vision blurred. Somewhere nearby, a yacht engine purred, indifferent. She thought of Rook's first day, how he'd leaned into her knee, trusting. The zip ties bit deeper as she strained. Her rank meant nothing here. Her badge meant nothing. The Bellevere name filled the space like poison gas and everyone knew it. A crowd had gathered at the far end of the alley. Dockhands. Tourists pretending not to see. Phones raised then lowered. Fear spread faster than truth. Lucas stood and brushed dust from his sleeve. Make it clear, he told his men. Next time she doesn't get back up. Elara tried to speak. Her mouth filled with copper. Rook dragged himself forward, one paw twisted wrong, eyes still locked on her. That loyalty, raw and stubborn, hurt more than the blows. A shadow moved at the mouth of the alley. Tall. Watching too closely for a passerby. Elara didn't see him clearly but she felt it, the way prey feels a hunter change the air. Sirens wailed in the distance, late and weak. The men scattered. Luca leaned down one last time. You should have stayed on base, Captain. He walked away smiling. Elara lay there, shaking, rain beginning to fall, streaking the oil on the ground into dark rivers. She pressed her forehead to the concrete and whispered Rook's name like a prayer. The shadow at the alley's edge stepped back into darkness. Whoever he was, he had seen everything. And he was already moving. 3 months earlier, the base at Fort Calder, tucked into the red hills outside San Virio, woke before the sun. The air smelled of dust and hot metal. Elara Voss ran the perimeter with Rook at her left knee, his black and tan coat already dull with grit. She liked mornings because they didn't ask questions. They demanded breath, rhythm, control. Elara had learned control the hard way, by losing it once and vowing never again. She ran past rows of concrete barracks, past a flag snapping awake, past Marines who nodded with that quiet respect earned only through time and scars. Rook matched her stride, ears forward, eyes sharp. He was more than a dog. He was her balance. When the world tipped, he pulled it level. Inside the K9-A, the fluorescent lights hummed. Elara knelt to check Rook's pause, her fingers gentle, precise. She spoke softly, words meant only for him. Across the room, Lieutenant Marrow watched, arms crossed, chewing on a toothpick. Orders came in late, he said. Joint tasking. Overseas port security assist. Civilian liaison heavy. Elara stiffened. Civilian meant politics. Politics meant hands tied. Where? She asked. Marrow hesitated. Monte Grigio. The name landed wrong. Too smooth. Too expensive. Too far from accountability. Elara had heard whispers, money like gravity pulling rules out of shape. She nodded anyway. Marines didn't get to pick storms. They learned to stand in them. The flight over the Atlantic was quiet. Elara reviewed maps while Rook slept with his head on her boot. Monte Grigio bloomed beneath them like a postcard. White yachts, blue water, hills stitched with villas. The briefing room smelled of coffee and cologne. A local official smiled too much, spoke too fast. You will patrol, he said, but discreetly. No visible aggression. Elara exchanged a look with Sergeant K9-A, her second. Discreet was another word for blind. On the wall, a photo flickered. Bellevere Shipping Consortium. Luca's father, Matteo Bellevere, shook hands with men who had never held rifles but controlled more violence than most armies. Elara felt Rook tense beside her. Dogs read rooms better than people. Their first patrol took them along the marina at dusk. Music drifted from decks. Laughter skipped across water. Elara watched reflections more than faces. She saw a boy knock into an old dockhand and not apologize. She saw guards look away when a certain yacht passed. She felt the rules bending. A man in a tailored jacket stepped from the shadows, eyes cool, measuring. Luca Bellavere didn't announce himself. He didn't need to. He looked at Elara like she was a puzzle he planned to solve later. "Captain," he said, somehow knowing her rank. "Your dog makes people nervous." Elara met his gaze. "Good," she replied. Luca smiled, thin as a blade. From a nearby terrace, someone watched the exchange, a broad-shouldered figure with a stillness that didn't belong to leisure. The man's eyes followed Luca, not Elara. He turned away last, already filing the moment away. Far off, thunder rolled over the hills, unheard by those dancing on decks. The storm had chosen its shore. The man's name was Jonah Pike, though most files still called him Chief Petty Officer, Ret. With a red stamp that read seal. He kept his distance by habit, not fear. From the cafe across the marina, Jonah watched patterns. Who arrived together, who left alone, who touched their earpiece when Luca Bellavere walked by. He stirred his coffee until it went cold. Monte Grigio wore money like perfume, thick enough to hide rot. Jonah had come here for quiet. That was the lie he told himself. The truth was simpler. Trouble had a way of finding him, and he had stopped running point 2 nights after the briefing. Jonah followed the sound of raised voices down a narrow street where laundry lines cut the sky into ribbons. He stopped short when he saw Elara and Rook pinned by a pair of private guards. It wasn't violent, yet. It was worse. It was humiliation. Luca stood close, speaking low, his words meant to bruise without leaving marks. "You don't belong here," he said. "This isn't your ocean." Elara didn't back up. She didn't raise her voice. She said, "Release my dog." Rook's hackles lifted, body tight, waiting. Luca laughed and waved his men away, but his eyes promised a return. Jonah melted back into shadow. He had seen this before, men who mistook restraint for weakness. Men who tested lines until they broke something alive. Jonah slept poorly after that. Dreams carried the smell of cordite and salt. He woke before dawn and ran the old paths along the cliffs, lungs burning, knees reminding him of the years. He passed a chapel where candles flickered for sailors who never came home. He thought of his last op. How rules changed mid-mission, how a delay cost a teammate a leg, how signatures on paper never bled. By the time the sun climbed, Jonah had made a decision he didn't admit aloud. He would watch closer. He would be ready. The next afternoon, Elara and Cade inspected a warehouse at the edge of the port. Crates sat in neat rows, labels pristine. Too pristine. Rook sniffed, then froze. Elara followed the line of his nose to a seam where fresh paint hit a fresh weld. Before she could signal, a local supervisor appeared, smiling too wide. "Restricted," he said. "No dogs." Elara held her ground. "Then open it," she replied. The man's smile slipped. Phones rang. Orders changed. They were escorted out. Cade muttered, "We're dancing blind." Elara didn't answer. She felt eyes on her back as they left. Across the street, Jonah leaned against a scooter, helmet under his arm, pretending to text. Their gazes met for half a second. Not enough for introductions. Enough for understanding. That night, Jonah tailed Luca's convoy as it threaded through the hills. He noted the turnoffs, the gaps in coverage, the men who never checked mirrors. At a switchback, a black SUV stopped. Jonah stopped too, engine idling. A man stepped out and scanned the dark. Jonah's hand rested on the old scar at his side, a reminder of patience. The SUV moved on. Jonah exhaled. He didn't know when the line would snap. He only knew it would. And when it did, someone would need to move faster than permission allowed. Elara wrote reports the way she ran, clean, direct, with no wasted motion. The problem was where they landed. Each night, she sent findings up the chain, and each morning the replies came back softer, thinner, shaved of urgency. Maintain posture. Avoid provocation. Local sensitivities, the words stacked like sandbags, heavy and useless against a rising tide. In the K9-A, she brushed Rook's coat until it shone, a small ritual to keep her hands steady. "We hold the line," she whispered. Rook leaned into her thigh, steady as a promise. Outside, Monte Grigio glittered. Inside, Elara felt the walls narrowing. The incident happened on a crowded afternoon. Tourists pressed close to the marina railings, cameras out. A protest flared near a Bellavere warehouse, dockhands shouting about unpaid wages. Elara and Cade moved to create space. Rook healed perfectly, eyes scanning. Then Luca arrived, late and loud, flanked by men in expensive jackets. He cut through the crowd like it was his birthright. A dockhand stumbled, fell hard. Luca stepped over him. Elara stepped in. "Sir," she said, voice carrying without shouting. "Back up." The crowd leaned in. Luca smiled for the cameras. "Captain," he said, warm as sugar. "You're making a scene." His hand flicked out, casual, and brushed Rook's ear. Rook growled, low, controlled. The sound rippled fear through the crowd. Luca's smile died. He leaned close. "Call off your animal," he whispered, "or I'll show you who runs this port." The moment stretched. Elara felt every eye. She chose restraint. "Stand down," she told Rook. He obeyed, muscles trembling. Luca straightened and raised his hands like a saint. Applause broke out, confused and thin. Later, a complaint landed on Elara's desk. Excessive posture. Public intimidation. The signature at the bottom was local. The pressure was not. Cade slammed a locker. "They're setting you up." Elara knew. She also knew she wouldn't bend. Some lines were drawn with breath and bone. That evening, Elara walked Rook along the old stone steps above the water. The sky burned orange, then bled to purple. She let herself think of home, of a mother who never understood why she chose a life that left bruises where smiles should be. A pebble skittered behind her. She turned. Jonah stood a few paces back, hands open. "Your dog's well trained," he said. His voice carried the ocean in it. Elara studied him. "You follow Marines often?" Jonah shook his head. "Only when the rules start lying." He told her enough to be useful and not enough to be caught. "You're being boxed," he said. "Bellavere pushes until someone pushes back. Then he breaks them." Elara's jaw set. "I don't need a savior." Jonah nodded. "Good. I'm not one." He paused. "But if things go bad, there's an alley by the fish market. Cameras die there at night." He turned and left before she could ask more. The rain started soft, then harder. Elara hurried back toward the marina. She never saw the van until it blocked her path. Doors flew open. Hands grabbed. Rook lunged. A baton flashed. The world shattered into noise and pain. From the shadows across the street, Jonah moved. "Not yet. Not here." He memorized faces, shoes, the way Luca watched without getting close. The line had snapped. Now came the cost. The hospital lights were too white. They flattened everything, pain, time, hope, into the same thin sheet. Elara woke to the steady beep of a monitor and the smell of antiseptic. Her wrists were raw where the ties had burned. A bruise bloomed along her jaw like spilled ink. She turned her head and found Rook on the floor beside the bed, bandaged, breathing slow. Relief hit so hard it stole her breath. She swung her legs over the side before the nurse could stop her and sank to the floor, pressing her forehead to his. "I'm here," she whispered. Rook's tail thumped once. The sound broke her. She didn't cry loud. She cried like a soldier, silent, shaking, counting breaths until control returned. By morning the room filled with suits. Local officials first, then a liaison from the embassy. Apologies were offered without weight. Phrases like unfortunate altercation and unclear circumstances floated above the bed. Elara listened, face still, eyes sharp. When they left, Kate came in and shut the door hard. "They're spinning it," he said. "They say you escalated." Elara nodded. "They always do." He handed her a folded paper. "Temporary suspension. Pending review." Her rank didn't disappear, but it faded, like ink left in the sun. She looked down at Rook. His ears twitched, sensing the shift. "We're not done," she told him, more to herself than to the room. Jonah watched the hospital from a parked van, rain ticking against the windshield. He'd followed the men after the alley, traced them to a villa that hummed with generators and silence. He'd photographed license plates, mapped routes, noted guard rotations. He sent nothing. Not yet. Evidence without teeth only taught predators how to hide. Instead he called in an old favor, one phone, one word, Bellavere. The pause on the other end was answer enough. "Be careful," the voice said. Jonah smiled without humor. "I plan to be." That night, Elara couldn't sleep. She walked the corridor with Rook, four-pole rattling softly. At the window, Monte Grigio glowed like it always had, untouched. She felt small and she hated it. A knock sounded. Jonah stepped in, rain still clinging to his jacket. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "Neither should they," he replied. He laid photos on the sill, faces from the alley, a crate marked with false codes, a ledger caught mid-scan. Elara's pulse quickened. "This is illegal," she said. Jonah met her eyes. So was what they did to you. He didn't ask permission. He offered a choice. You push through channels, they bury you. Or we build something they can't ignore. Ilara looked at Rook, at the bandage on his head, at the city beyond the glass. The line had already been crossed. She nodded once. Across town, Luca Bellevere poured a drink and watched the rain bead on the balcony rail. He laughed, easy and bright, and raised his glass to the dark. Let them try, he said. He didn't see the net forming. He only felt the old thrill, the one that came right before a fall. They worked at night because the city slept loudest then. Music drowned footsteps. Engines hid whispers. Jonah moved through Monte Grigio like he belonged to its shadows, and Ilara learned to trust the silence he carried. She was officially suspended, which gave her time and took away protection. She wore plain clothes now, dark jacket, soft shoes, and kept her hair tucked under a cap. Rook stayed close, muzzle still healing, eyes sharper than ever. They met in forgotten places, an abandoned boathouse that smelled of algae and rust, a chapel courtyard where candles flickered for reasons no one asked about. Jonah laid out routes with a pencil on brown paper. Ilara added questions. Cade brought coffee and a burner phone, his loyalty a quiet fire. Their first move wasn't loud. It was patient. Jonah slipped a tracker under a Bellevere courier's bumper while Ilara watched from a bakery doorway, hands wrapped around a paper cup. The tracker led them to a warehouse that wasn't on any map given to officials. Inside, crates moved at odd hours, guarded by men who never joked. Ilara recorded times, faces, habits. Rook learned the rhythm of the place, marking scents that didn't belong. Once, a guard dropped a cigarette and crushed it with anger instead of care. Ilara circled that detail. Anger made mistakes. The pressure came anyway. An envelope appeared under Ilara's door. Photos of her mother's house back home, a time-stamp glowing red. Luca's message was simple. Leave. Ilara's hands shook once, then steadied. She burned the envelope in the sink and watched the smoke curl. They're scared, Jonah said when she told him. Good, she replied. But fear cut both ways. That night, she dreamed of the alley and woke tasting blood. Luca felt the net tighten without seeing it. A shipment went missing. A guard didn't show. His father called from Milan, voice clipped. Stop drawing eyes, Matteo warned. Luca bristled. They're ants, he said. Matteo hung up. Luca poured another drink and stared at the harbor. He hated being told to slow down. He hated women who didn't flinch. He ordered a show of force, something public, something final. The show came as a fire at the old boathouse. Flames climbed fast, hungry. Ilara and Jonah arrived to smoke and sirens, their plans turning to ash. Jonah cursed softly. Ilara watched firefighters move and felt the loss like a bruise. Then Rook froze. He pulled, nose down, toward a drainage grate half melted by heat. Beneath it, a charred crate lid lay crooked, revealing a false bottom. Inside, plastic-wrapped bricks stamped with a symbol Ilara had seen on Luca's watch. Jonah laughed once, sharp and short. He rushed, he said. Anger. They didn't celebrate. They packed the evidence and split 3 ways. Jonah sent a single encrypted file to a contact who couldn't be bought. Ilara sent nothing. She waited. The waiting was the hardest part. Somewhere across the water, Luca smiled at the fire he'd ordered, unaware he'd lit his own fuse. Dawn broke pale and cold. Ilara stood on the balcony of the safe flat Jonah had arranged, watching gulls wheel over the harbor like scraps of paper thrown to the wind. Her phone buzzed once. Then again. Unknown numbers. Missed calls. The city felt different, quieter, as if holding its breath. Rook paced, nails clicking, pausing to sniff the air each time a car slowed outside. Ilara tightened her jacket and checked the pistol she wasn't supposed to have. Suspension didn't erase instincts. It sharpened them. The first strike came not with guns but with words. News screens and cafes showed Ilara's face beside a headline that used alleged like a blade. Marine officer under review after port incident. The story bent facts until they screamed. A grainy clip cut right before the baton fell on Rook. Comments poured in, fast and cruel. Jonah watched from the doorway, jaw set. They're shaping the crowd, he said. Crowds excuse anything. Ilara felt the old heat rise, shame, then anger, then resolve. Then we give them something better to look at. They moved fast. Cade leaked a time-stamped clip to a reporter who still believed in mirrors. The video didn't shout. It showed restraint. It showed Luca's hand on Rook's ear. It showed the moment that should never be crossed. The reporter hesitated. Then nodded. 1 hour, she said. The clock started ticking. Luca felt it like a chill. Phones rang unanswered. A fixer stammered. There's talk of a task force, he said. Lucas smashed the phone against the wall. He ordered his men to bring Alara to him. Now, he said. They found the safe flat empty. Rook's hair lingered on the couch. The tracker beeped uselessly from a trash bin. Jonah had taught Alara how to vanish. They set the meeting at the marina, pretending ignorance. Lucas sent a message through a mutual contact. *truce. Talk. Alara read it and smiled without warmth. Jonah shook his head. It's a trap. All talks are, she replied. That's why we control the room. They placed cameras where the lights failed, microphones where laughter would hide whispers. Jonah took a position high and still. Cade blended with dockhands. Rook lay at Alara's heel, calm as a held breath. Luca arrived late, flanked by men who scanned more than they smiled. He spread his hands. Captain, he said, smooth again. This has gone too far. Alara kept her voice level. You hurt my partner. Luca's eyes flicked to Rook. Animals break, he said. People too. The words were the tell. Jonah sent the signal. Lights flared. Sirens cut the air, sharp and sudden. The reporter stepped forward with a mic. Mr. Bellevere, she said, care to comment on these shipments? Screens lit with images, crates, ledgers, timestamps. The crowd surged. Luca's smile cracked. He bolted. Luca ran toward the water because he believed it belonged to him. The marina erupted, voices shouting, shoes slapping wet stone, sirens braiding into one long scream. Alara moved without thinking. She cut left, trusting Jonah's angles, trusting Rook's nose. Track, she whispered. Rook surged forward, powerful despite the bandage still wrapped around his head, paws drumming a rhythm Alara felt in her chest. Boats rocked as people jumped aside. A champagne flute shattered, bright and small against the ground. Luca shoved a man down and vaulted a rope line, breath ragged now, jacket flapping like a torn flag. Jonah watched from above, calm as a tide chart. He clocked Luca's choices, fast, sloppy, panicked. He saw the mistake before it happened. He'll take the service pier, Jonah murmured into the mic. Alara heard it over the rush of blood in her ears. She angled right, ducked under a boom, slid on algae, caught herself with a palm that burned. Rook cut ahead, nose low, tail straight as a compass needle. The pier narrowed, lights failing one by one. Luca glanced back and saw the dog closing. Fear finally found him. It hollowed his face. At the pier's end, Luca skidded to a stop. A patrol boat idled 10 meters out, engine coughing. He waved frantically. I'm Bellevere, he shouted. Move. The boat didn't move. Jonah had made sure of that. Alara closed the last distance, breath steady despite the ache. It's over, she said. Luca spun, eyes wild. He reached into his jacket. Alara saw the metal, the way his hand shook. Drop it, she ordered. Rook growled, a sound like gravel dragged across steel. Luca laughed, thin and broken. You think this ends me? He said. My name floats. He raised the gun. Rook launched. The impact was clean and terrible. Teeth, weight, a cry swallowed by wind. The gun skittered across the boards and fell into black water with a sound like a final answer. Luca went down hard, breath punched out of him. Alara was on him in a heartbeat, knee pinning shoulder, cuffs snapping closed. She felt the tremor in her hands only after it was done. Cameras found them. Flash after flash. Jonah descended the stairs, moving like the noise wasn't there. He checked Luca once, then stepped back, letting Alara own the frame. Sirens arrived for real this time, Coast Guard, federal units that didn't ask favors. The reporter spoke into her mic, voice clear. Breaking news, she said. Luca Bellevere detained following evidence of international smuggling. The crowd roared not with joy but release. Later, in the quiet that followed, Alara knelt and held Rook's face between her hands. His tongue lolled, happy and fierce. Good, she whispered. Jonah watched them and felt something uncoil in his chest. He had spent years believing endings were always loud and lonely. This one felt earned. A phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at it and smiled. Task force confirmed, he said. Mateo's on a plane. Alara closed her eyes. The weight she'd carried shifted, not gone but lighter. Across the water, Monte Grigio glowed again. This time the light didn't blind. The holding facility sat on the edge of the port like a concrete jaw, lights burning hard against the night. Alara stood outside the interview room, hands clasped behind her back, listening to voices through thick glass. Luca Bellevere had stopped laughing. He sat slumped now, suit wrinkled, hair damp with sweat, eyes darting every time footsteps passed. Federal agents moved with purpose, files tucked tight, radios murmuring in clipped tones. This was the moment before the storm finished breaking, the dangerous calm when powerful people decided whether to fight or fold. Inside, Luca leaned forward, voice hoarse. "You don't understand," he said. "My father will fix this." The agent across from him didn't look up. "Your father is in the air," she replied. "So are warrants in 3 countries." Luca swallowed. His name, once a shield, had become a weight. Elara watched through the glass and felt no triumph. Only a steady, tired resolve. Justice wasn't loud. It was slow and heavy and exacting. Jonah stood beside her, arms folded. The lines in his face looked deeper under fluorescent light. "This is where it gets messy," he said quietly. "Last swings." As if summoned, alarms blared. Shouts echoed down the corridor. Cade's voice crackled over the radio. Multiple vehicles approaching fast, unmarked. Jonah moved before the words finished. "They're coming for him," he said. "Or for you." Elara didn't hesitate. She unclipped Rook's leash. "Then we hold." The power cut without warning. Darkness swallowed the hallway. Emergency lights flickered red, turning faces into masks. Footsteps thundered outside. A crash shook the doors. Elara positioned herself at the corner, heart steady, breath counted. Rook crouched, silent, a coiled spring. The first man through the door carried a shotgun in certainty. He never saw Rook launch. The second hesitated long enough. Elara disarmed him with a sharp strike and a twist that ended the fight. Shots boomed somewhere distant, muffled and chaotic. Jonah's voice came through her earpiece, calm as ever. 2 more left stairwell. I've got one. Glass shattered. Smoke rolled. Lucas screamed from the interview room, a thin, terrified sound. Elara felt a flash of anger, at him, at the men risking lives for a name. She shoved it down and moved. The stairwell fight was fast and brutal, all angles and breath. One attacker slipped and fell hard, the echo final. The other raised his weapon and froze as Rook's teeth found his sleeve and held. Federal agents surged in behind them, weapons trained, shouting commands. The noise peaked, then fell away. When it was over, Elara leaned against the wall, sweat cooling on her skin. Her hands shook now, the delayed cost. Rook pressed into her leg, grounding her. Jonah approached, limping slightly, blood at his temple. He waved off concern. "Looks worse than it is," he said. Outside, blue lights painted the night. Helicopter blades chopped the air. The net had closed. An agent approached Elara with a tablet. "Captain Voss," she said. "Your suspension is lifted. Effective immediately." Elara nodded once. The words felt unreal, small compared to the weight that had lifted. She looked at Luca being led away, head down, cuffs bright. He didn't look back. He didn't have to. This was finished. As dawn crept in, pale and clean, Elara stepped outside with Jonah and Rook. The sky lightened over the water. For the first time since Monte Grigio, her shoulders eased. "You changed everything," she said to Jonah. He shook his head. "You did. I just stood where I was needed." He looked at Rook and smiled. "Good dog." The sun broke the horizon. The night finally let go. Monte Grigio woke to calm, the kind that follows storms and battles. The marina's water glimmered in soft morning light, yachts swaying gently, oblivious to the chaos that had unfolded days before. Elara walked along the dock with Rook at her side, leash loose, muscles relaxed. Each step was measured, quiet, a promise kept to herself and the dog who had saved her more times than she could count. Behind her, Jonah followed, silent but present, like a shadow that had become friend. Cade trailed a few steps behind, carrying equipment, a small grin tugging at his usually stern face. The city had paused for a moment, and in that pause, justice breathed. Inside the federal building, Luca Bellevere sat in a holding cell, his tailored suit now rumpled, his face pale. His father, Matteo, had landed hours before, only to be met with warrants and agents, red tape unbending, law wielded with precision. Luca's men who had survived the night were in interrogation rooms, eyes wide, mouths dry. The empire they had relied on for centuries felt fragile, vulnerable. No deal, no influence, no shortcuts. The law had spoken, slowly but inexorably, and it had listened this time. Luca realized, too late, that wealth and arrogance could not protect him when someone refused to look away. Elara knelt beside Rook at the water's edge, tossing a stick across the calm harbor. He sprinted after it, fur rippling in sunlight, paws splashing lightly. She laughed, a sound she hadn't allowed herself since the alley incident. Jonah watched from the pier, his expression softening. "You did it," he said. "Not me, not anyone else. You kept your line." She shook her head, glancing at the horizon. We kept it together, she replied, voice low but firm. The wind carried the words across the marina, brushing against buildings, water, and people unaware of the storms that had raged in their midst. Later, Elara addressed her team, officially reinstated, orders clear, authority restored. Federal agents thanked her, officers commended her, and even some local citizens whispered their gratitude. Yet the victory wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was in the small things. Rook wagging his tail, Cade's proud glance, Jonah's quiet nod, the sea stretching endlessly before them. The city was alive, but it had changed subtly. Fear of unchecked power had shifted, leaving room for accountability. In a small cafe later that morning, Jonah handed Elara a folder. Inside were reports, evidence logs, transcripts, all filed correctly, legally binding. It's done, he said. All of it. She studied the papers, thumb tracing lines of truth that had survived lies and threats. A weight lifted that she hadn't realized had pressed against her chest since Monte Grigio first shimmered in the Atlantic sun. She closed the folder, breathed deeply, and let the morning touch her face. Justice was slow. It was painful. But it was real. And this time it had a witness. Elara walked back to the marina, Rook padding silently beside her. The harbor sparkled. Sailboats drifted. The city moved forward, unaware of how close it had come to chaos. She looked at Jonah. What now? She asked. He shrugged. The world. Always the world. She smiled faintly, feeling its weight and its freedom. Together they walked into the sunlight, leaving the shadows behind. Some lines had to be defended. Some battles had to be fought. And some heroes, quiet, relentless, loyal, stood between chaos and order, making sure the innocent survived the storm. Monte Grigio would remember nothing. But Elara, Rook, Jonah, and those who had chosen courage above fear would never forget.